Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Business of Boutique Fitness. My name is Lacey Keeker. I'm the CEO and founder here at Studio Grow, and I'm joined by Heather Garrick, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of our Bespoke division. Now, Heather, today we're going to talk about what I would say is one of the most ambitious projects we've ever been involved in. The launch of Tonal's in-person boutique fitness pop-up in Soho in New York City, which we launched in 100 days. This is one of those that probably like chills to the core of a lot of us that are planners that go, oh my God, was this really happen? Wound up being one of the most successful things I think we've ever seen done. Very short timeline, and yet absolutely remarkable results.
Yeah, that's right. It was such a fantastic project to be involved in as part of the Bespoke team, and so excited to be part of Tonal's vision as well. This is a very, very ambitious brand who came to us with a very ambitious goal, which was launching this studio within 100 days from kind of idea all the way through to execution. We got straight stuck into it, didn't we? We took the plan, we executed alongside their team, who are absolutely fantastic to work with. The Bespoke team worked really, really closely on bringing this to life. So I'm really excited to talk to you about how we did it and what we learned.
Yeah. So whether or not you're a major brand saying, wait, can I bring something to fruition relatively quickly, or you're a studio owner saying, wait, how quickly can I go from inception to idea? I would not advise 100 days on the norm on this one. However, this is going to take you through how we did it and how we wound up selling out Tonal's pop-up in New York City in, limited notice, but extraordinary results on this. So why don't you just start? Give us the background on Tonal, and I love that I'm asking a Brit for the background on Tonal right now, given that currently Tonal is not available in England, very sadly.
I know. I'd say that's the only downside about Tonal is that it's not available in the UK, unfortunately. I absolutely fell in love with the equipment, having tried it at Tonal Training Lab. It is an incredible piece of technology. So those of you who know Tonal will probably know them more as the home gym equipment. It's an incredibly smart piece of equipment that also looks absolutely beautiful on your wall. So it's amazing. It's designed in a way that you can use it in a space that you would use for other things. You can put it in your living room, you can have it in your garage, packs away really, really neatly. But then when you get it out, pull the arms down against the wall, it transforms into this incredible piece of strength training equipment. And so you can do pretty much every single exercise that you would do in the gym, but it's completely calibrated to you. So there's no pressing of buttons, anything like that. There's no changing of plates, needing to decide how much weight you want to lift on a particular day. Tonal knows all of that based on your entire workout history, and then on the day gives you, it's so good. So as well as giving you the confidence, I think that you know that you are lifting the right amount for your body, it also saves so much time of not having to reset things, adjust, make sure you're doing things properly. It feels incredibly safe as well because you're not working with those players. And just an aside, but something that I was incredibly impressed with, and I hadn't fully appreciated the value of this until I saw it in real life at Tonal Training Lab. We were there taking part in a class. The woman who was on the Tonal next to me, we were then chatting afterwards, and she'd had a stroke a few years ago. And so one side of her body was an awful lot weaker than the other side. And what she said, she was like, oh my goodness, it's incredible to be able to get a great workout that it automatically adjusted. So it knew, it could tell, like with her right side, okay, we're going to make it significantly harder, and it automatically adjusted to the left. So she still got a fantastic workout in a really safe environment, felt supported in a way that she felt she wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So it's got so many different use cases, and I was blown away by the technology, and very sad that it's not in the UK yet.
Roy, this is a reminder to you that we would like this to come to the UK
yes,
desperately. Well, knowing how good the equipment is, it makes sense that they then look at the brand itself and said, hey, how do we go on ahead and take this in a very different direction? It's important to know they've been a direct-to-consumer brand. They have been brilliant marketing, but have have eschewed kind of the massive retail rollout. They have retail stores, but it's on a more limited basis. And really, we're testing this idea of what does a studio setting look like. Now, this was done in conjunction with the rollout of their latest iteration of the equipment. It was a chance to really build strong PR. It was a chance to show what this was like. But I think it was also a chance to really test what was an in-person experience like for this.
Yeah, exactly. Because and that's a very different approach than they'd been used to, and that their business was set up for being able to deliver this incredible like at-home experience, and the online retail experience was set up for that. But they hadn't done boutique in this way. They hadn't done the in-person experience, and the value of that. I mean, hopefully, as you've got from the way they kind of expressed my enthusiasm for the experience itself, really getting people to actually try out, use the equipment, use the tonals, is the best kind of marketing that they could ever do, because people fall in love with it when they try it. And so the focus was on how do we bring that experience to life. Now, one of the big advantages Tonal's also got is it has incredible instructors, and these are instructors who've got a following online already. They've got their devoted followers that they will be all taking their classes religiously, really like following them on the socials. Great instructors who are brilliant at delivering also that kind of virtual workout, so workout from a distance. It's then a different thing taking that into a studio environment, and so yeah, we had to think about, well, how does that experience then look, being able to give the kind of one-on-one instruction, walking around the space, as well as teaching to the class as a whole.
And it was interesting. I'm going to give a look inside to once this was open. This is something that Tonal did extraordinarily well. They did a really brilliant job of prepping their instructors to give an exceptional, very different experience. That in-person experience, I think that was really important for their community, their clients. What was fascinating to me is there were several pop-ups like this from major virtual brands or other major brands that were doing this around the same time. And we actually, sat down with a couple of people in New York City. I did in June. They knew we'd been involved with Tonal, but didn't have probably an idea as to the scope of it. Mm-hmm. And I happened into them on a conversation comparing Tonal to two other brands that had done this in New York City over the first 6 months of the year. And the comment was how different the experience was at Tonal versus the other two brands, because it was as if the other two brands had hired, in some ways, celebrity instructors or their own very celebrated virtual instructors who had forgotten what an in-person experience was like. And sitting in on that conversation was a real eye-opener for me, that we put, I think, a real passion in making sure that experience was going to be extraordinary, and so did Tonal on this. But having that from feedback direct from a consumer was absolutely fascinating. Now, New York City, you're in London. I am a 41-minute flight from New York City, so I'm up there pretty regularly. New York City is a challenging market.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of noise that you need to cut through when launching something like this, because people have got so much choice of where they go and train. Why should they choose Tonal? And from understanding also that it was only going to be a limited time space, so particularly around the January time, why would they be committing their time to come to a studio that's not going to be around long term? So we did have to do a lot around the education piece of speaking to a new audience that was not just the dedicated Tonal users, who we did have a lot of, people who are passionate about wanting to come and train in real life. We also had to reach out to a totally new audience, which was this local audience within New York City, and to explain to them, why come and try this? Why is this the latest and greatest thing?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You think about a typical Tonal user has the space for a Tonal. An average New York City apartment is like 600 square feet. Do they have the space for a Tonal? No. And so this was a chance to really also say, what does someone who is never going to be able to necessarily use a Tonal, or at this season of their life, they're not going to be able to use a Tonal in-home, how do we go ahead and capture them as users in the future? Now, this all started with a pretty aggressive launch plan. 100 days, not very long. I think this is a key portion of this, is that we needed everyone to be incredibly decisive. There wasn't room to wait on any questions. There wasn't room to wait on any ideas. This was something that we had to leap ahead on. In your mind, what were the most important decision points in that early launch plan of how we were going to phase this in?
Yeah, so we thought about the audience in two ways. So we split it into the existing Tonal users who already knew all about the product, were passionate about it, wanted to come because they wanted to train in person with their favorite instructors. They received totally different communication and tailored communication around that compared to that and our new audience who we were reaching out to mainly on Meta. And seeking to build a wait list very quickly. We did this in a compressed time period, so this wouldn't be our typical time period for launching a studio, but given we had only 100 days to do this, we had a short period for building a wait list, during which we had to really focus a lot on the educational messaging about what to expect, because the difference here is compared to launching a new reformer studio or a new yoga studio or a new cycle studio, people are like, okay, well, what's a tonal training lab? What is a tonal training lab? What is a tonal? Why should I come? And one of the things we really had to think very carefully about too is what kind of language we use to describe the type of training it was, because people's perception of, what you would say, what's a class where you're going to lift weights is different from maybe a strength class or a tailored an AI-driven tech class. What actually is it, and what language is going to resonate with people? I think we found that people typically understand a bit more okay, I need to lift some weights as part of my routine, so we need to incorporate that, whereas strength was maybe a bit of a vaguer concept that wasn't quite as appealing. So really had to work on the language, explain really clearly what it was, have some great visuals. Really blessed to be working with Tonal, who have got this very strong brand identity. Yeah, able to turn around some really, really kind of beautiful creative that we can work with that was very appealing, and that was also able to showcase the equipment. So before the studio was open, we were still able to get content of people using the Tonal, which is something that we really had to show. So short period of building up that wait list where we could educate people what it was, and then we went into quite a concise pre-sale period where we were focused on really selling class packs, because this is only a pop-up that was going to be open for a limited amount of time. So we were doing class packs, incentivizing people to come multiple times, initially at an initially discounted rate, and then going up to full rate just before we opened.
I loved the layout of this in its simplicity. I mean, part of it is, well, I don't know. There's all these quotes about how, great comedians and things like that will take, 3 days to spend, a paragraph and drop it down to one sentence. And in a sense, that was a lot of what I feel like a lot of the pre-planning is how did we get this down to the absolute essence of what was going to drive 90% of the growth goals on this? And it really worked quite exceptionally well. Now, thinking about waitlist, pre-sale opening, it's something we think about with a lot of studios that we're opening. It's a very common practice of this. In this case, we had waitlist, as you said, for Tonal's existing clients. We had waitlist for clients that were going to be new to Tonal, that were going to have to get a very different client journey, have to experience that very differently. Pre-sale for Tonal's existing clients, it's important to know one factor that they built into this was a week that was specific for their clients. And I think really, this is a brand that cares deeply about their existing clients, that care deeply about their overall experience, that when we went into this, number one single biggest priority was that their clients had the ability to experience this. And I think that was a very it's a very reassuring thing when you're working with a brand to see that level of loyalty to their customers, that level of passion for their customers and their experience.
Yeah, exactly. And so not only did they offer them a chance to kind of purchase early, they had this whole week which was dedicated just for their clients to come in to try out beforehand. Now that served multiple purposes. So firstly, the clients were really happy, their existing clients, because they were special, because they were giving that priority. Also, it allowed Tonal to do a good test run of what the experience was like, because all of those people who came in the first week already knew how to use a tonal, and so came in there and they could really practice how the classes worked, how that ran, so that then when the actual grand opening happened, we had people coming in who'd never used the equipment before. We'd ironed out like all of those issues, so that worked very well. I think one of the things that other studio owners can learn from that pre-opening period that Tonal did with their existing members was where we sometimes see if boutiques are opening a second studio that's relatively nearby to their first studio, that a way to make your existing members feel special, to have some kind of pre-opening event, invite only. Here's for our loyal, kind of loyal previous members. Do you want to see the first to see the space?
Yeah.
They're the ones who are going to be kind of talking about you, and it's nice to make them feel like they're still acknowledged. It's not that just going after this 100%. Completely new audience. So yeah, hopefully that's something that some studio owners can take away from this.
I love that. Mm-hmm. We went from launch to execution rapidly. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say the launch plan took about 5 days to develop. Mm-hmm. It was a very quick, very rapid fire. By the way, what's the phrase in regards to the outcome is in the preparation or something along the lines? Like this is an exact truth that the preparation of those 5 days, the execution and the results of this would not have come without 5 deep days of strategy, pulling from the really strong base of Tonal's team, the really strong base of Studio Grow's team on this. But executing quickly means that you're going to be sitting in a pressure cooker. Like just there's no two ways around this. If you've opened a studio recently, if you're in the process of opening a studio, you understand this. If you're rolling out a major rebrand, if you're doing something like this, you know what that feeling is like. This was on kind of a major scale because we had 6 weeks to be open and that was it. There wasn't something where we could roll in. So this felt like pressure magnified to me overall. You know, when you look at the execution of this, well, first of all, like what went right, and in your mind, what were things that maybe didn't go wrong, but what were things that were like, hey, these were sticking points that were good lessons to learn from?
Yeah, we definitely had some hiccups, which we'll talk about. I think lots of what went right was that I think we had like this unified vision as a team from day one about what it was we wanted to achieve, and all parts of that machinery were working really well. That the Tonal team were able to turn around the social creative really quickly. We were able to get that channel up and running. It already had a really engaged audience. I mean, I was overwhelmed by reading the responses and the excitement of some of those existing Tonal members.
Especially in your Facebook group.
Open. Yeah.
That was astonishing.
Yeah, exactly. And you had some people who, want to book out the whole thing, like give me as many classes as I can. So that was wonderful. And being able to kind of tap into that market was wonderful. One of the hiccups that we did face was around Meta and Meta setup. And I know that Trish, our wonderful marketing manager at Studio Grow, would be very keen for me to re-emphasize this. Would be like, our message to studio owners is don't rush the Meta setup. It is very finicky. It gets spooked very easily, that platform. And typically with our studio owners, we will be suggesting that it's kind of many months out, we're starting that process. We're getting the account set up slowly, steps to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Now, we didn't have the luxury of being able to do that with Tonal. We had to do things very quickly. So it meant that we'd created a new account, we put in billing details, we were setting up ads. And unfortunately, that meant that something was flagged within Meta's systems that ended up getting the account switched off, kind of flagged for suspicious activity for quite a while, really, which was a concern to all of us because as anyone who's tried to get on the phone to Meta to sort things out will know, it's not that easy to get through to sort things out and get things fixed. And so main takeaway was, wherever possible, do not rush the setup of that, the administration of getting an account set up for the first time. It was a big challenge for us, and it meant that for several weeks we had to pivot to different marketing channels to bring in leads. Ended up being okay, and we ended up getting it sorted out, but I'd like to avoid having that experience ever again. So
say it isn't so.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a big takeaway would be would be not rushing that setup.
And it's really impressive. I was going down this list in the end. We launched paid ads for the wait list. We ran all of the lead generation campaigns across paid media, managed the organic social, which grew very rapidly, very quickly, which was incredible on this one. I know we worked alongside Jack Taylor, who was doing the influencer partnerships and the PR, and they did a brilliant job of this. Set up all the marketing automations in the CRM, built the brand new studio website, connected it to their CRM, did all of these things in what was essentially 3 weeks.
It was when you list it like that, I do realize it was a lot of stuff. Actually, particularly, I think it's worth dwelling on the CRM setup and the website, because that is a big lift, and ended up working very, very smoothly with the platform that we were using. There was a lot to get right in a short amount of time. But yes, I think the team worked together incredibly well to be able to do that. Going back to what you were saying about Jack Taylor and the influencers are a really important part of the strategy, because particularly with something like Tonal Training Lab, where there does need to be quite a bit of an explanation as to what the experience is like, that really works very well with an influencer context, because you can get somebody else explaining without it feeling like the brand itself is having to be too kind of school teacher about it. Like, here you go, you come in and you do this and you do that. But influencers will come in and they will naturally talk through the experience, walk people through what to expect, maybe what they might have been concerned about beforehand, and then ended up, having their concerns alleviated, and the great experience they had. So we worked with some great influencers. We were focused very much on people who had a big following within the New York area itself, because obviously it's such a hyper-local thing that we need people able to come to. So working with people who had a local following, rather than needing to necessarily go after the kind of big names. But although Jack Taylor did a great job of getting people along, partly because they were also launching Tonal 2 at the same time. So they had a big press event, like a beautiful event, amazing food, amazing drinks, some great photography and videography out of that we were then able to reuse in kind of future campaigns for them.
And I think it's really important you touch on the fact of local influencers versus the kind of these massive names. It's something we've seen when we've worked with a lot of brands of late, that influencers, honestly, with about 10 to 25,000 followers, are vastly outperforming in terms of results than the influencers that have 1 million plus followers from a local perspective, because a lot of them have built that first 50,000 followers seems to be hyper local in general, much more niche based on this one. And suddenly, if we're starting with them, we wind up with a very different experience from the influencer front.
Yeah, exactly. Because you think about the amount of wastage there is in the audience that you're targeting if you work with somebody with millions plus followers.
And the cost on that.
Yes, exactly. You're paying for an awful lot that you don't need.
Yeah. Now looking at this, when we look at the results and the wins of this, really exceptional results. It opened on time. That is always a win. Okay, I just want to be very clear on this one. It opened under budget. Always a win. and really importantly, we beat every sales target that we had. I mean, I don't know if that gets any better than that. I feel like I just get a warm, fuzzy feeling on all of this one. So campaigns, I was looking at this, campaigns reach over 650,000 people, generated thousands of leads from non-Tonal members, converted nearly 18% of them into paying clients from the non-Tonal members. I mean, a really important lesson, by the way, for other platforms that are direct-to-consumer platforms to recognize is those conversion rates, those rates of people are something we just don't see direct-to-consumer digitally.
Yeah, absolutely. From a starting point of very kind of low awareness of what the experience in itself would be like, was so happy with achieving those numbers. And I think just one of the shames really is just that it didn't go on for longer, because the reputation was building. We were having people coming to the class, having an exceptional experience, and then
begging
they couldn't come back because the classes were full, or the Tonal Training Lab was about to close. So I think reputationally, it was the kind of experience that would have built, and also partly because of the experience, but also because I think what Tonal are doing really interestingly is the incorporation of data into people's workout. Now, I'm a very kind of numbers-driven person. I absolutely loved at the end of the workout it telling me in total how many pounds have I lifted, how my relative strength on either side of my body. Like, it just, the breakdown of data it gives you is incredible. And being able to track that over time and be able to see progress, I think is so motivational and so helpful for retention in the long term, for people to be able to see, okay, well, I've been going and this is the program. You can see it, in a graph data, here it is. Because I think we all have those times where you're going to classes and kind of think, oh, I know I should go, but I'm not quite sure. Is it making the difference? But totally incredible in that way. And I one of the things I think I'd be particularly excited about, I'm hoping that they're going to do more in future, is how we incorporate that data more into the CRM in future, of reminding for people coming back of, oh, last time you lifted this, and here's the challenge. So both on a personal level, but then also as a group as well, because not only does it tell you how much you lifted, the nice thing as well, it also says, okay, so as a class today.
Really?
Yeah.
That I did not know.
Nice. Yeah. So you all feel like you're in it together. So it'll say, as a class, here's what you lifted as a group.
I
and
love
then
that communal
we all
piece.
got in and had our team selfie together in front of the Tonal. It was a really nice group experience, even though you're working on completely personalized training for you. Everyone's doing the same exercise, but somebody might be lifting twice the weight as I am next to me, but it's just calibrated directly for them. So I like that kind of group experience, and I'd be really interested to see how that data could be pulled more into like CRM on a kind of an ongoing basis to get people coming back.
I thought one other interesting thing, Troy Taylor, and I talked about this at Athletech, probably one of the interesting things that they received from this was they were commenting that the typical feedback loop that they would get on something was kind of 60 to 90 days of, they'd introduce something, they do this, whereas the feedback loop was reduced to, 15 minutes to an hour, and it was consistent. And we were talking about the power of what that brings in terms of innovation, that, this period can feel like a renaissance, I think, for brands like Tonal, because the amount of feedback you're going to receive in 4 to 6 weeks is probably the equivalent to the feedback you might have received in 1 to 2 years. And what you can do with that, if you are very conscious, and Tonal was incredibly conscious on how they tracked the feedback, what they were taking, what they were sharing with their instructors, how they were pivoting and really on the fly tweaking based on that feedback on a day-to-day basis. That, to me, one of the most powerful things I saw and witnessed from this.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's both the verbal feedback that people were giving directly after classes, but then also just being able to see people using it in a kind of real life environment of watching, like, oh, okay, they couldn't quite work out how to, that button needs to be pressed to go here, or maybe we need to make some slight adjustments to make that experience even better. There's so much information that a brand like Tonal can get from having that volume of people coming through their doors and trying 100%, out and using the equipment.
100%. And both from the member side and the non-member side, which I loved. I loved how they were able to categorize that. Now let's take this to things that boutique fitness studio owners can take away from this. We know what major brands, and actually before we do this, I'll say this. If you're a major brand like Tonal, this is your opportunity. This is an opportunity to know that, one, you can test without a massive expense. The expense of this was in comparison to signing a 10-year lease in New York City, going with a massive build-out. The expense of this was so minimal. The return on investment was significant. This is an opportunity that I think we can all learn a lesson to say there is something for a pop-up done correctly in fitness that I hope we see more of, and especially recognizing that done correctly is the key thing. Having sat and listened to this group of incredible New Yorkers and hearing the difference between Tonal done well versus other pop-ups done averagely, this is your chance and this is your opportunity to have this, breadth of data, this incredible brand building experience, quite frankly, incredible conversions and sales that are going to drive from this. But let's assume you're a typical studio owner. The first thing that comes to my mind is that if you have between 5 and 15 studios, pop-ups are going to be your friend. It's an unusual thing to say on this, but if I was sitting in that 5 to 15 studio range and I wanted to test 4 different markets that I was considering going into, maybe I was sitting in I'll use a great example in the US. Maybe I was sitting in LA County and I wanted to know, am I going to go Orange County, San Diego County, Santa Barbara County, all surrounding counties, although over, like, thanks to LA traffic, probably a 4 to 6 hour drive on this one. If I was in London and maybe we're asking, am I going to jump to a Bristol or a Liverpool or a Manchester or any number of other places, this is your chance with very limited risk to go in and test your markets and say, this is where I really feel confident, to also build a wait list in those markets, build excitement in those markets, but to really give you the data to say, I'm moving forward confidently in these markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great way of testing it and actually being able to benchmark sites against each other. So particularly kind of having done in the past, even trying to decide where to launch a pop-up, launching wait lists in a couple of those areas. We hadn't quite committed where we were going to open yet, but comparing, like, what kind of click-through are we getting here? What kind of acquisition costs are we getting here for leads? And that helping us to make the decision there of, like, well, where should we launch the pop-up? It's a really quick, you get the feedback really quickly and for relatively low cost as well for running those ads. So.
Yeah, I think absolutely incredible on this one. You touched on one of the other lessons, which is to start your marketing earlier than you think.
Yes, I'm going to reiterate that because I think there's one takeaway I'd want studio owners to get from this experience is, yes, you probably do need to start your marketing earlier than you think for a new studio, because not just the actual marketing, getting your ads out there and market, but the preparation for that beforehand, making sure you've got everything in place, the account set up properly, you've got your domains, you've got your website set up, really great landing pages, things ready to go so that when you do then launch your wait list, you're not kind of scrambling about trying to get things
100%,
finished. So
100%.
Yeah, definitely to take that.
I mean, we normally say in a typical studio, our goal is to have 6 months before you open for your marketing. And that's, to make sure that, again, Meta doesn't go a little bit wild and crazy on us. It's to make sure that you have the time to do things correctly. And quite frankly, that you've got the space to really start social, start waitlist, start pre-sale with enough room between them that you're going to maximize that time. Like that is time well spent and with significant ROI, much more so than trying to race around so that most people can pay, what is actually, in comparison, a relatively small rent amount or something of the like. Tonal was real clear on its audience. Yeah. I think this really important lesson for every studio owner on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So advice would be, like, get really crystal clear on who your audience are. And you're likely to have, like, several different segments. So it's not just there's one audience that's right for you, but maybe 3 or 4 different avatars that are going to be your ideal customer type. And what you want to do is really be able to understand not just who they are, but kind of what they read, what media they consume, like where to find them and what kind of messaging is going to resonate with them, like whether they're early adopters, whether they're making decisions based on price. There's a variety of different things that really to delve into their kind of character and the way that they're going to make a decision to join your studio. So really get clear on your audience in the early days, and there's lots that can be done there around if you've already got studios and you're launching in a new area. Lots of kind of surveys, and then kind of delving into also the demographics too of the area that you're going into.
Talk to me a little bit about the education lessons. It's interesting because even today we're opening plenty of Pilates studios. We're opening plenty of studios that are very unique markets. We were lucky to work with a team from Strong Pilates who have row formers, which, that's a new one. A lot of people will know what a reformer is, but a row former, very, very new idea on this. Education, though, I find is critical across the board. Really, if all it does is say, why are you different than every other studio? Why are my reformers different, but why is my reformer studio different than this studio? Why is my strength studio different than this strength studio? What this comes out on this.
Yeah. So you want to be really clear on that. And then the other related piece of advice I'd have there is the kind of show, don't tell. Like the more simply that you can put that message to explain what it is you do, like within an image. Okay, I understand what I will be doing in this class. how am I going to be feeling by the end of it, and what makes this brand different from maybe others that I've seen. But to do it in a simple way, if you're ending up writing paragraphs of text about the reason why people should come, people are going to switch off. Unfortunately, we have very low attention spans nowadays, so.
I hate to say this, that I don't even think that worked in the 1930s and 40s. So that is just bad marketing. Let me be clear in some ways on this one. What ifs? We know that if you're opening a studio, you are going to have plenty of what ifs. I like explaining to clients who are opening studios that you're going to have contingency plans A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then so. Like, it's kind of part of the reality, because that is the nature of business, is that there are going to be what ifs, there are going to need to be backup contingency plans. It's something we spend a lot of time on with the hope that we're going to need as few as possible, but we're going to have them in our back pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. So you really don't want to be putting all your eggs in one basket here. Reliance on only one platform is a really big risk for many reasons, but including the fact that your account can get shut off at any time. I don't know if I've told you this story before, but during the lockdown, I had a brief stint in addition to working in the fitness industry, where I started a gardening related startup. I don't know if you know this, I'll tell you a new story. So it was one of my old bosses who called me in the middle of the first lockdown, and at the time in the UK, all of the nurseries, those in the kind of garden centre nurseries, were all being closed, and all of the plants were going to have to be just thrown on, composted, because there was nobody to deliver them all, because it was just at the time where everything was, and so there were just millions and millions and millions of pounds worth of plants that were just sitting there with no way to distribute them to people. And so he'd spotted this opportunity to be able to say, if we really simplify this e-commerce experience, and it's as simple as you saying, I've got a medium-sized garden and I like red, white and blue flowers. Okay, we'll make sure you get amazing value, and just a whole load of them will turn up at your house. So we launched this business, all gardening related, particularly because in lockdown we were heavily, heavily reliant on Meta. Nearly all of our advertising spend was on Meta, and it went incredibly well. It was absolutely flying, and then our account just got switched off. And we realised the reason why our account got switched off was it was flagged as, because we were selling pots as well as it was don't use the terminology like pots and plants in the messaging. It got flagged as drug-related content, which it obviously wasn't. But yeah, potted plants. And there was nothing that we could do. And it would have sunk the business. If we hadn't managed to get it switched back on again, that would have been it, because that was our total reliance. The e-commerce site was getting this was the advertising on primarily Instagram. And so it's been a real lesson for me of do not, even if something's performing really, really well for you, have a plan B and have other options of ways of getting out there. So what we had to do is be getting on our kind of local next door groups, community groups, getting people talking about us in the areas that we were delivering. We had to really, really hustle. So yeah, advice would be that there are other things you want to be looking at. So local advertising, stuff that you can get out there, things that you can mobilize pretty quickly if things, if platforms do get switched off, and make sure you've got that backup plan just in case.
I love it. I love it. I love it. When I look back at all of this and really reflect, what I'm most impressed with is that this was done so successfully in 100 days. The what ifs were planned for, the what ifs were dealt with. Mm-hmm. Everyone was on board. I remain remarkably impressed with the Tonal team, with their equipment, with everything else. But this really was an extraordinary project.
I was so delighted to work on it. And Troy, if you're listening,
we love you.
We love you, and bring Tonal to the UK.
and important to know, we did find one person who came to the business, came to the Tonal Training Lab with a bootlegged Tonal. They had shipped it to the U.S. Did you know this?
No, I didn't
And then
know.
they shipped it to Central America because they were like, I will not live without my Tonal.
Wow.
And they did their own setup on this one. And I died laughing that I went, oh my gosh. Because there was a moment when Bethany Ann said, maybe we can ship Tonals to the team in the UK. It was like Lisa said, it's there. They came to visit from Costa Rica. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah,
Passion for a product will take you all kinds of places. I love this. Well, y'all, thank you so much for joining us on this Tonal journey. Now, if you've been watching or listening, please be sure, like this episode, follow us, share this with a fellow studio owner or brand that you love. And of course, join us along the ride, leave a comment and tell us what you've learned and what you're putting into place from this. Y'all have a great day.